Hello and welcome into another episode of the Young Chronicle Fun Facts. So in this episode we are going to talk about veganism. So this is a fairly modern concept, came about in the 90s, mid-90s rather, which is an extreme form of vegetarianism. So that basically means that you not only just avoid eating meat completely, you cannot have milk, which is maybe okay, good in a certain way for some of us. No cheese, like really no cheese, no mayonnaise, no honey, no gelatin. So this basically means that you can't have half the things outside home, because gelatin is used in many desserts that you eat outside, and honey is also okay, but no mayo. Like if you avoid eating mayo, what would you really eat in this fast food world? Veganism is way more extreme because it's not just restricted to food and your dietary considerations. It also expands to what you wear and what you do. You cannot use animal produce in any form. So no sweaters for you, no leather bags for you, and nothing that involves any animal produce. So that's quite extreme, I would say. So this concept of veganism, let's go into the history of veganism essentially. It was introduced in 1944 by a gentleman called Donald Watson, and he was a woodworker. Essentially what he said was that he wanted to introduce this new concept, this new dietary concept, and he felt that it would conflict. It wasn't really vegetarianism, because vegetarians also sometimes ate egg and also had milk, but it was, since he wanted to introduce something that was a little more extreme, in the sense that he wanted to introduce the concept of benevolence towards animals. He decided that this should be called something else, and therefore he came out with the term vegan. So vegan was officially coined somewhere around 1944, which is when this entire concept was introduced by Mr. Donald Watson. And to aid this entire concept, so about 40% of cows in Britain had been diagnosed with tuberculosis just a year prior to when Mr. Watson introduced this, and that is what reinforced this entire concept of veganism, because people, he came out and said that, if you don't have milk, you will not have tuberculosis, which was true to a certain extent. But this is one thing but it was just one of those things, right? Swine flu, all these things keep happening, and this is what, as a matter of fact, increases the adoption of veganism, and has been happening over a period of years. So when this concept was introduced, the Vegan Society had only 25 members, and now by around 2005 it had millions and millions, and now if you look at it, more and more people are adopting it because of these flus and viruses that spread through animals primarily. And I think the entire concept of benevolence toward animals has sort of increased a lot more in the past years. But while researching for this, we came across another fun fact, and the fun fact is that the concept of vegetarianism was somehow first initially mentioned somewhere around 500 BC, and it was introduced by none other than Pythagoras. Yes, you would know this Greek philosopher by a different name, not by a different name, but for a different reason. Now, while we were researching for veganism, we figured out that the concept of vegetarianism was introduced by none other than the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Now, you know him for something absolutely different. You know him for the Pythagoras theorem, right? Well, he was the first one who introduced this concept of vegetarianism and spoke about it rather, and he also started talking about benevolence towards animals and other species. Now if you think of it, the Pythagoras theorem has never brought in any benevolence towards between the maths teacher and the students, right? I mean, but he did introduce the concept of benevolence among other species and made life difficult for all of us, irrespective. That said, now if you look at it, coming back to veganism, the biggest problem that vegans face is not this extremism, but the fact that vitamin B12 is found only in animal produce. So it's found in milk and all non-vegetarian items. So vegans, those who decide to be vegan, need to take a dietary supplement. So I would rather say that this concept is only supported by modernization, because something like this couldn't have been followed so passionately, decades ago, because you were wearing your warm clothing was made of wool, your bags and satchels were made of leather, and we were quite heavily dependent on animals for our regular things. But over a period of time, with new discoveries and new inventions and new supplements, you find that adopting such a concept has become easier and easier. So that's veganism for you guys. It's a product of modernity, so to say. I don't know whether it is a great thing to follow or not. I am definitely not vegan, but it's worth seeing how it goes.